everyone. I have these two great books. One is on Plantation Homes and the other one is on the people of Tennessee. And there is a relevance to me because this is not my history. I grew up in the West, and this is very much about the South. And it's pertinent to me, especially with the plantation homes, because my husband worked at Fairview Plantation. Okay, now he has just recently retired, so we want to remember the plantation homes. This book says, from the Greek revival grandeur of Belle Helene to the Moorish fantasy of Longwood to the simplicity of Rosella, the plantation homes of Louisiana and the Natchez area powerfully recall the brief flowering of the unique civilizations of the Old South. Now, lest you get all political on me, I am not trying to espouse slavery, not one bit. But this is a part of our history, and I would like to recall the architectural aspect of it. So let's just revisit plantation life a little bit. Now, there is not, I'm not going to read everything on every page. I just want to kind of go a very brief overview of all the different ones that are in here. Okay. New Orleans and the lower Mississippi. Okay. Magnolia, California. Magnolia, California. One of the first large plantation homes to be built between New Orleans and the Gulf of Mexico. Magnolia was constructed by two river captains, George Bradish and William Johnsonville, in 1795. 2.5 stories, 20-inch thick brick walls. That is some kind of old, wow. At the rear of the grove was a large sugar mill, one of the state's first. Okay. Here's Mary Lake, 1700s, located on the river road at Delcourt. Downriver from Braithwaite, is the delightful raised cottage Mary. That's a cottage? Oh my goodness. The house is small but well proportioned, with 4 rooms downstairs originally and 4 upstairs. The history in here is minimal, I think. Orange Grove, or Braithwaite, stands on private grounds south of New Orleans on the east bank near Braithwaite. One of the antebellum's culture's truly unique houses, the Great Manor featured a number of innovations: brick-floored basement, central heating, and hot running water. The main floor had a center hall and 4 large rooms with 20-foot ceilings, marble tile floors, and an ornate stairway. It was gutted by fire in 1982, but apparently it's still standing. I guess they couldn't get into this one. The Great Hall in Orange Grove originally had a floor of black and white marble tiles, but before the fire, these were removed by vandals, along with a great stair climbing 3 stories, and the doors and the silver doorknobs. And there's an aerial view. Wow. I guess people would be tempted to go in and retrieve artifacts. I don't know if you can call them artifacts, but you can certainly call them antique. Kenilworth, 1759, lying east and south of New Orleans, about 5 miles east of Poydras, is Kenilworth, a 1-story Spanish block house. Kenilworth Plantation at one time comprised over 12,000 acres. Mrs. Val Acosta is now their family home. The house restored by Dr. and Mrs. Val Acosta is now their family home. So somebody lives there now. It's beautiful. Look at the way all the moss hangs from those trees. Beauregard House, 1840. Built in 1840, Beauregard House is situated on the Chalmette battlefield. Owned and restored by National Park Service. Beauregard House now serves as the visitor center for Chalmette National Historic Park. That'd be fun to go see. Wow. Pictorial House, 1790. Built by Don Santiago Lorraines about 1790 on the east. Scheduled for demolition in 1963, the home was donated by the Missionary Sisters of the Sacred Heart to the Louisiana Landmark Society and moved to an adjacent site. Now beautifully restored, Pictorial House is open to the public. Beautiful. Okay. 7 Oaks, 1830, now settled with its ghosts. The one-time 18-room mansion, 7 Oaks, was located within an industrial tank farm in West Wego, across the river. West Wego. And then that's the name of a farm, but I guess that's... Okay, so let's look at this picture too. That's the more ghostly. Through the years, the house suffered greatly from neglect and from souvenir hunters and vandals who stripped the interior, molding, stairs, and flooring. The ruins were bulldozed in 1977. Destrehan, 1787. Destrehan is a unique example of a plantation home outliving the oil refinery that had been built around. One of the oldest homes in the Louisiana Purchase. Destrehan's construction was begun in 1787 and completed in 1730. Mexican Petroleum Company bought it, and then rapid decay, vandals, treasure hunters. 72, American Oil donated the house and 4 acres of land to the River Road Historical Society. Oh, nice that it was restored. Okay, and this one, they all look very similar. I mean, not identical, of course, but only a few years before the Louisiana Purchase, the Fortier family built a typical raised cottage on land granted by the Spanish to an earlier ancestor. Known as the Killer Place, known both as the Killer House and as Home Place, the The structure is now on the National Register as historic places. Wow, so many. Evergreen, 1840, also on the West Bank below Felicity and Oak Alley. Evergreen is one of the last existing great plantation complexes, built about 1840 and restored by Matilda Gray of New Orleans. Wow, that's just so awesome. Greek Revival outbuildings. Okay, so this is what it looks like close up. It's quite grand still. One of the oak avenues still exists, complete with its wooden slave cabins and spaced between the trees. At the Fairview Plantation, where my husband worked on the golf course, there are still slave quarters standing there as well. It's a very sorry part of our history. San Francisco, 1853. I wonder why I say it's San Francisco. Well, that must be the name. Anyway, on the River Road at Reserve next to the levee stands one of the most exuberant examples of plantation home architecture, appropriately named Saint Frusquin, or translated from the French slang of the day, one's all. The San Francisco has been completely and painstakingly restored and authentically furnished, and it's a brilliant example of the lifestyle that ended with the Civil War. Yeah, it's interesting. I don't think this book was written necessarily in the spirit of sorrow for our past, but there will always be people who remember the Gone with the Wind style of life. Originally, formal gardens extended several hundred yards from the house. Okay. Yeah. Valcour, Amy. I mean, the bottom line is probably plantation life would not have existed if not for slavery. And so it's not a shining example, but it is definitely amazing, the architecture that was done in the day. It's sort of like the aristocracy of the old days in Britain as well. We're very glad, all of us in the world, most likely, that we do not have lords over other people. The Gardens of Valcour, Amy. This is Felicity, 1850, built as a wedding present for his daughter, Felicity. It was begun in 1847 and completed in 1850, divided by a center wall with 2 large rooms. It's funny to call these. It was a 2,400-acre working plantation owned by the St. Joseph Planting and Manufacturing Company. Oak Alley, 1839. It's long distance. Wow, it's like a bunch of oak trees. The oaks were planted 80 feet apart by an unknown French colonist in the early 1700s. He placed his house at the end of the row. And the name Oak Alley has endured, and it was not recently necessarily, but restored by Mr. and Mrs. Andrew Stewart. Oak Alley has been assured a serene future by Mrs. Stewart's establishment of a non-profit foundation for the continued preservation and maintenance of the house and the grounds. Look at that, you guys. Wow. Gosh. I had oak trees like this in my youth growing up where I did in Southern California. Okay. Wellham. 1835. It's Louisiana Highway. Constructed in 1835. It was 2,300 acres in 1866. In 1975, it was bought by the Marathon Oil Company, and in 1979, the company demolished the home. Oh no. Gosh, I hate to see beautiful architectural history be destroyed. That's why my home is so amazing. Jefferson College. I don't consider that a plantation home, but it is amazing architecture, and it all has something very much in common. Tiscuco, 1855, framed in the impressive avenue of the live oaks. They restored the house and furnished it with antique furniture. And then both General and Mrs. Daigle have strong ties to the plantation culture. It's distinguished for the meticulous execution of its interior detail, referred to as a raised cottage. Its front corner rooms are 25 feet square with 15-foot ceilings. Wow. Okay, here's another one called Huma's House. Named after the Huma Indians, the 2.5-story mansion has been completely restored and refurnished to reflect the period. And let's see. Alright, and the Delta Queen. Wow, right by the coast. Bocage 1801, built in 1801 by Emmanuel Marius. Completely conceals the roof with a unique, let's see what does that say? The first floor, still influenced by the raised cottage attitude, is short and squatty. The second level ceilings are much higher. How interesting. This is what it looks like close up. So you can see the lower level is short and squatty, and the upper level is 15 feet high. Now, how do they do that with a roof that goes down? There must be a drain. No, the roof's not going down. Is that an optical illusion? It's going up over here. It's not the same place. Can't be. It's not. Well, I think it is. I don't know what I'm looking at. Well, I mean, okay, I'm not going to try to figure it out. Along the bayous. The Hermitage, 1812. It's been furnished in the Civil War style, a period during which the house and plantation were at their prime. Along the bayous. Okay, that's the last one, along the bayous. Right, I think I missed a page. Nope, I didn't. Ooh, that's beautiful. Belle Alliance, 1846. Today, the 33-room, 2-story manor house is complemented with mature planting of flowers and greenery. Okay, the the plantation remained in the family until 1915. And then Mr. and Mrs. C.S. Churchill bought the plantation in 1927. And the gardens had been totally demolished, and the Churchills restored the house and began a careful landscaping. Nice. I'm glad that was saved. Maidwood, 1848, acquired its name because of the oh my gosh, Maidwood acquired its name because, along with 60,000 slave-made bricks, the home was constructed with wood from the grounds of the plantation. near Napoleonville, one of the most palatial homes in the state. The house was 8 years in construction by a North Carolinian, Colonel Thomas Pugh, who did not live to see it finished. The house is well constructed with interior walls about 18 inches thick and outside walls of about 24 inches. Wow. Wow. Okay. This one's Ducros. Thomas Villanova. Granted 4,400 acres. Ducros was used as a hospital during the Civil War, and it was purchased in 1909 by Samuel Palmer, whose son Irwin Palmer related memories of frequent visits to the house. Ducros is said to be modeled after Andrew Jackson's Hermitage near Nashville. You know, all this time I've been here, I never went to the Hermitage. Okay, this is called the Rienzi, once believed to have been built as a refuge for Queen Maria Louisa in the event of the defeat of Spain in the Napoleonic Wars. The entire bottom floor was originally open and used to stable horses. In about 1850, it was walled into 4 rooms, and the 4 upper rooms adjoining a cross-shaped hall and the elaborate interior woodwork or Spanish in style. 1814, the Rosella, constructed of hand-hewn cypress lumber and home-baked bricks. Rosella was completed in 1814 and has remained the same family of its Acadian builders Jean-Baptiste Thibodeau and Natalie Martin. Enlarged several times and renovated in 1956 by the present owners, Dr. and Mrs. Ben Ayo. The plantation consists of over 350 acres devoted to cultivation of sugar cane. Interesting. Just prior to the Civil War, Rosella's holdings included 74 slaves, 2 sugar mills, and about 1,200 acres on the grounds are the remains of the antebellum kitchen, a separate structure, the slave quarters, and the sugar mills. Wow. Arlington, 1855. Arlington Plantation once lay on both sides of the deck. Okay, the builder was Euphraise Carlin, whose forebears received land grants from the Spanish and is said to have been the owner of 2,000 slaves. Later owners added a small wing to each side of the house, and they a tastefully furnished mansion on spacious. It's still up. Oak Lawn Manor, 1827, like a giant resting in a large garden of 135 live oaks. Is the Irish Bend of Bayou Tack near Franklin. The great manor house was built by Louisiana Supreme Court Judge Alexander Porter in 1827. After the Civil War, the house fell into disrepair and was purchased in 1927 by a steamboat captain. Made his fortune in the oil fields. In 1960, Oak Lawn and its extensive grounds and gardens were given a second restoration by Mr. and Mrs. George Thompson. Last Island, Irish Bend. Shadows on the tack. Around the hall was abandoned. In 1958, the house and $400,000 were passed to the trust for care. Open to the public, shadows on the text stands as a memorial of Weeks Hall, who said of the stately house, no place is more tranquil nor more ageless. It was originally constructed as a townhouse for plantation owners. 2.5-story Bayside is situated on the north side of Bayou Tuck in Jeannette. The mansion has 10.5-foot ceilings on the first floor and 14-foot ceilings. Okay, currently owned by Mr. and Mrs. Robert Roan. Bayside is still a working plantation. See, that goes to show you that we didn't have to have slaves, I guess, to make plantation work. Okay, this is Darby House. That is so rustic looking, it does not look like a plantation to me, but it says the Darby House was built in 1820 by Francois St. Mark Darby as a wedding gift to his son and daughter-in-law. The house never recovered from the Civil War, when Union troops rode horses through it, smashing furniture and fixtures. 2 brothers continued to live in the house well into the 20th century, and one brother existed by selling milk from a push cart to the townspeople of New Iberia, and the other vegetables from his garden. In a state of ruin, the property was acquired in the late 1970s by a local preservation society and was scheduled for restoration. Fire, however, brought an end to that dream, and now of Darby nothing remains. Oh, why? Things come and go, including people in this world. Acadian House Museum, 1700s. Okay, and this is Lady of the Lake. This is now on a park. The Acadian House is, I think it's still standing. Although ransacked by federal troops during the Civil War and later by vandals, the house survived. It's 1970s, when it was ordered bulldozed by absentee landlords. Oh, that's tragic. Oh, that's beautiful. Cretan Point, 1831, under construction for nearly 4 years. It was begun in 1831, and the owner died of yellow fever, and Cretan Point then passed on to Hippolyte III, John Jules, and later was deserted. Today, the mansion located on Bayou Bourbeau, just west of Sunset, has been restored by Mr. and Mrs. Louis J. Cornet of Lafayette. They decorated it so beautifully. And here's the mansion itself. And interesting how they were, it's just an era, and everybody seemed to build things the same way. Hinckley, early 1800s, built in the early 1800s by Asa Norton on a Spanish grant. After the war, Ramel Hinckley lost his fortune, commenting that he only had $150 in good money. The house is still occupied by Hinckley descendants, Mr. and Mrs. Arthur Hinckley Jr., and is furnished with the heirlooms of generations of the same family. Wow, see, that is awesome. That it was preserved, but also that it stayed in the family is just incredible and awesome. See, that's how I think it should be. Magnolia Ridge was built by Judge John Moore. The home was occupied by the Prescott family for many years. Second, they were the last organized group to surrender in late 1865. They don't say whether it's still up or not. Okay. Backland, 1849, also known as Payne House, was built by a wealthy Washington physician who went to Virginia with his bride. House servants shortly before the Civil War. The daughter of one of the slaves lived near the house in the 1970s. Does not say whether that is still standing either. Home Place, 1826. Dr. Francois Robin. In France. Resting in a grove of oaks. So I guess, so I've never really spent any serious time in New Orleans. Apparently there are a lot of oak trees. Home Place now on the National Register is furnished with heirlooms of the Stevenson and Quirk families. So this has stayed. No, it went to the Stevenson family and they restored it, but they've had it for a long time in their family. Okay, Sunflower, 1839. Sunflower was built in 1839 by Marshall and Aaron Prescott, who in 1829 brought the slaves with them from Georgia and bought 11,000 acres of land along Bayou Boeuf, below Bunkie. Bayou Boeuf along Bunkie, that's a lot of bees, at a price of $4.50 per acre. And the plantation complex included a double row of brick cisterns. Jill Prescott descendant sold her share in whose children still own the property. Wow. Sunflower, although occupied since 1925 when the family moved nearby to a newly constructed house, remained in good condition until 1957 when Hurricane Audrey blew a huge pecan tree across the center of the home. Oh, that's another one. At least it was nature. Oakwald, 1835. I'm only halfway. Oakwald, 1835, just 3 miles east of Bunkie on the Louisiana Highway. Ravaged by Union troops, Oakwald was repaired and enlarged following the Civil War and has remained in the same family since its construction. It is now owned by Mr. and Mrs. Porter B. Wright. Bubenzer, built for Mary McCoy in the 1850s. Bubenzer enjoyed the life of a manor house located on the west bank of Bayou Boeuf. It's still a working plantation which has been owned by 3 generations of Bubenzers. The house is well maintained and preserved. Wow, awesome, awesome. And this one's Witchwood. Wow. Overlooking Bayou Boeuf near Cheneyville is a 1,000-acre working plantation is still owned by Tanner descendants, Mr. and Mrs. Robert Munson. It has planted sugar cane, soybeans, the 2.5-story, 14-room house with floored attic. Had been remodeled a number of times, but still has the original log cabin standing next to it, which housed the Tanners while the great house was under construction. Wow, gosh. Lloyd's Hall, 1810. The 2.5-story Lloyd's Hall was built about 1810. Mr. and Mrs. Fitzgerald bought the plantation in 1948 and restored the great house overlooking Bayou Boeuf near Cheneyville. And it's still the center of a working plantation. Cane River country and North Louisiana. This is Magnolia, surrounded by 10 acres of live oaks and magnolias. The big house of Magnolia Plantation was constructed about 1840 by Ambrose Lecomte and burned by Union troops in 1864. Following the Civil War, Magnolia was rebuilt. So this is since 1864. The plantation is still owned by descendants of the founder who, in the late 1970s, seceded the plantation cotton gin and double row of brick slave cabins to the city of Natchitoches. Melrose, 1833, built by the child of a slave. Melrose became one of the outstanding plantations in the Cane River area. Probably to the end of that, she and her sons held over 6,000 acres in the vicinity. The plantation house, Melrose, is said to have been built by Marie Therese's son, Augustine Metoyer, in 1832. The octagonal were constructed. Okay, they don't say if it's still standing or not. I would assume that it is, and that's a great legacy for that man. Oakland, 1821, owned and occupied by the fifth generation of Prudhommes. Oakland was constructed in 1821. Each of the rooms is interconnected. Downstairs, the basement rooms have been converted into a museum, which features early farm tools, physicians' equipment, and lantern drilling tools. Oakland, with its avenue of live oaks, was the scene of the Horse Soldiers featuring John Wayne. This was used in a movie. Located 10 miles south of Natchitoches, it has one of the most complete collections of outbuildings of any plantation in Louisiana. St. Maurice, 1826, located high on a bluff overlooking a major crossing of the Red River east of Natchitoches. St. Maurice was also near the junction of El Camino Real. Built in 1826 by Dennis Fort on a Spanish land grant. Following the Civil War, St. Maurice changed hands repeatedly, and one owner was Luther Small, whose ancestors are said to have been slaves on the plantation. Oh, that's what's the word? Perfect outcome. There's a better word for it, but I can't think of it. In poetic justice, that is the term. Okay. In 1980, the stately old home changed hands for the last time, and after renovations was destroyed by fire. Oh no, 1981. Only the chimneys and columns remain. That is what that looked like since the fire. That's all that remains. Land's End, 1857. I'm not going to read that one. I'm sorry, it's not that interesting to me. Leighton Castle, 1810. That's just gorgeous. The event. Within the walls of Leighton Castle is incorporated part of Old Bry House, built in 1810. Leighton Castle was constructed in 1910 to surround the earlier house by the widow of the... Okay. Didn't really give enough information to make it terribly interesting. Arlington, 1832. Situated on spacious grounds overlooking Lake Providence, an old bed of the Mississippi stands. Arlington. Union Army headquarters, that's what that was used for at some point. Grant himself visited there. Built as a single-story house in 1841 for Mrs. T.R. Pattern, the house was later raised and converted into a two-story manor house by General Edward Sparrow, who later became Louisiana's senior senator in the Congress of the Confederacy. The Natchez area and downriver. Wow, that spreads out. Winter quarters is listing. This is winter quarters. It's listed as having been built in 1803. Is actually 3 houses, each built by different owners. Okay. General Grant made the house his headquarters for a short period. Perhaps the only reason the house was not burned by federal troops. It was purchased from the heirs of E.R. McDonald, who restored winter quarters in 1965 and opened it to the public as an example of a working plantation owned by one of the South's most innovative planters. Okay. Oh, wow. Ruins, Windsor Castle. Well, there's no pictures of it. Just the great house survived the war, serving as a temporary Union hospital during part of the Vicksburg campaign. And although the builder died within 2 years of its completion, Windsor Castle was a center for Daniel family until fire destroyed it in 1890. Springfield. Now see, this is what the typical plantation homes look like here in Tennessee as well. Built during Spanish ownership of West Florida by Virginia planter Thomas Marston Green Jr. is said to be one of the first houses in America. Wow. Located near the Natchez Trace, the historic trail between Natchez and Nashville, Tennessee, Springfield was once a 3,100-acre plantation. In January of 1977, the house and grounds, about 10 acres, were leased to Arthur E. LaSalle of New Orleans, who undertook the restoration and opened Springfield to the public. The mansion is listed in the National Register. Wow, one of the first. Wow, that is history. The Burn, 1836, situated in the northern suburbs of the city. Yeah, see, I lived one street away from an old mansion, and I lived in East Nashville, and it's just tucked in with all the other houses and kind of cloistered by trees, but it's just an awesome thing to, just walk down your city block and see a mansion, and to think, okay, I'm living on the land. My house is situated on the land of a previous, what do you call them? Not just a mansion, okay, I'm totally a plantation. That's the name of the book back, okay. So, Walworth's descendants occupied the burn until 1935. Just a collection of antiques. Constructed in about 1818 for Natchez postmaster, the Monmouth. It's purchased in 1826 by a New York-born attorney. The present owners are Mr. and Mrs. Ronald Riches and Mr. and Mrs. Mason Gordon of California, who have accomplished a tasteful and detailed restoration. Wow. Constructed in 1818 and still standing. That's amazing. It's 200 years old. Devereux, one of America's most outstanding examples of the Greek Revival style, and was built in 1836 for William St. John Eliot. National Historic Landmark is Auburn, designed by architect Levi Weeks for an attorney and a planter. 1812. In 1827, Auburn was purchased by a Pennsylvania native, Dr. Stephen Duncan. Became the largest cotton planter and slaveholder. He owned 6 cotton plantations, 2 sugarcane estates, and 1,041 slaves. Ironically, Duncan was also active in the American Colonization Society, dedicated to the resettling of freed slaves in Africa. Oh, wow. Still owned by the city of Natchez, Auburn is operated as a house museum by the Town and Country Gardens Club. Okay, wow, that is so ornate. That must be so difficult to keep up. Okay, Elms Court, 1836, situated in the midst of a wooded park. Elms Court is one of Natchez's most outstanding suburban villa residences. It's a residence, okay. But the house, okay, 1895, it's known as the House of 1,000 Candles. Former president of the Girl Scouts of America. The house is handsomely furnished with a collection from 6 generations of Natchez families. Wow, wow. Okay, let's go on to the next. This is a very long book. Okay. Rosalie, 1823, located on the Natchez Bluffs at the south end of the Spanish Promenade. Okay, so that's the house at the front. Peter and his wife Eliza left no heirs, and following their deaths, Rosalie was sold at a public auction to a local millionaire, Andrew Wilson, also a native of Pennsylvania. Rosalie served as headquarters for the Union Army during the occupation from 1863 to 1865. Here's what the inside looks like. Surge of Vicksburg with General Grant spending a few days at the mansion after the siege of Vicksburg in July of 1863. Now Mississippi State Shrine of the Daughters of the American Revolution. The house contains many of the furnishings of the Little and Wilson families. Look at those colors. Gosh, that gold is just wowie, wowie. Oh, wow, gosh. Stanton Hall, constructed in 1857. Now, this whole book would have been so much more interesting if we could see the inside of all of these places like this last page had. Pilgrimage Garden Club, which presently owns the property and operates it as a museum. So the Stanton Hall is now a museum. And this is Longwood, built in 1860. There's a paper coming out of here. Let's see. Longwood, giving silent and dramatic testimony to the impact of the Civil War upon the economy of the South. Longwood is the largest and most elaborate octagonal house in America and has stood uncompleted since 1861. Workmen raised the existing colonial dwelling. Ownership by the Nutt family continued until 1968, when Longwood was acquired by the McAdams Foundation of Austin, Texas, and the foundation in 1970 donated Longwood to the Pilgrimage Garden Club of Natchez. Wow, golly, gosh. This is Cherry Grove, 1866, established in the late 18th century by a French seaman, Pierre Surrogate. Since its establishment, Cherry Grove has been in the Surrogate family and is presently owned by Mrs. Douglas McNeil of Elms Court in Natchez. Cherry Grove has an exceptional collection of outbuildings, including stables, corn cribs, and barns, which reflect the plantation's primary concern with the raising of horses and cattle. It looks almost more like a regular house than a plantation. Rosemont was constructed in 1815 for Samuel Davis and was the boyhood home of his son, Jefferson Davis, President of the Confederate States of America. In his memoir, Jefferson Davis wrote that his father, Samuel, found a place that suited him about 1 mile east of Woodville in Wilkinson County, Mississippi. He removed his family there, and is there my memories began. In the early 1970s, Rosemont was acquired by a Texas attorney, Percival T. Beecroft. Jane Rose, appropriate Davis family furnishings and memorabilia have been acquired. So this is actually going to be a very amazing memorabilia. Our President Jefferson. That's just amazing. Just amazing. This is just beautiful, isn't that? Just gorgeous. Richland, 1820. Okay. 40 miles northeast of Baton Rouge in Rich Hill land sits Richland Plantation, the 1820 bridal house of Elias Norwood. 4 tall chimneys open on each floor. A winding staircase spirals upward from a central hall. Originally, the entire floor of the home, 3rd floor of the home, was a ballroom. Wow. And the kitchen was separated from the house, remodeled years ago. The 3rd floor has been made into bedrooms, each with its own bath, and the kitchen has been connected with the main part of the house. Richland is a working plantation consisting of 4,000 acres devoted primarily to cattle and soybeans. Well, they don't say who owns it, so I guess they want to kind of stay out of it. The Shades, 1808, proudly overlooking a broad expanse of shaded grounds north of Jackson, Louisiana. The Shades was built by slave labor with lumber and brick from the plantation in an architectural style reminiscent of the eastern seaboard. Since its construction during Spanish rule, the Shades has been the property of the Scott family. And Miss Eva Scott, great-great-great-granddaughter of the original builder, Alexander Scott, lived there until her death. She was widely known for an antiques collection, particularly for her 1,000 bells. Miss Scott left her plantation and home to her cousin, Mr. George Berger, who now resides at the Shades. Wow, that is awesome. So there is a huge family history in that one. East Feliciana Parish Courthouse. I don't want to read about a courthouse. Benjamin Kendrick decided to build a plantation home in its beautiful East Feliciana acreage north of Baton Rouge. He chose a clearing on a bluff. Not much more said about that. Here's one where you get, here's the plantation, okay? Oh man, that walkway is so gorgeous. But here's a couple of the rooms inside. Asphodel's twin parlors feature twin French parlor sets and twin French mirrors over the mantels. The sliding doors that separate the 2 rooms move as freely today as the day they were installed. Oakley Plantation was Audubon's first introduction to West Feliciana. Now it's part of the state park in Audubon. Okay. Rosedown, 1835, built by the wealthy young Daniel Turnbull for his bride Martha Rosedown in West Feliciana Parish. In 1956, the house and gardens were completely renovated by Mr. and Mrs. Milton Underwood, so it's been restored and kept up, but it's not still in the family. What's this? The Myrtles is set in a grove of ancient oaks, giant mimosas, and large crepe myrtles that provide a blaze of color in the spring. Oh, I'll bet you. Oh my gosh. The house was constructed on a 650-acre Spanish land grant. Ooh, look at that tree. This one's called the Cottage. Built on a Spanish land grant. Purchased by the Butler family. Butler. The structure was large over. Butler family lived there until 1951. When the cottage was sold, the outdoor kitchen was used during their entire occupancy. The cottage complex includes a schoolhouse, milkhouse, slave houses, a smokehouse, kitchen, carriage barn, horse barn, Judge Thomas Butler's carriage, and other original farm equipment and implements. The cottage is presently owned by Mr. and Mrs. J.E. Brown, who opened the property to the public in 1952. Wow. Afron Villa, 1849. Afron Villa was originally a 4-room cottage. Wow. The gardens and approach of live oak dripping in soft moss interspersed with azaleas. I'm not going to finish that one. There's not enough information about it. Highland, 1799, the ancestral home of the Barrow family, who built several magnificent plantation homes in the Felicianas and still occupied by the descendants. Highland is surrounded by approximately 150 live oak trees planted in 1832. I just have this silly question, but you can't surround a house with dead oak trees, so why do we say live oak trees? I'm confused. The holdings of the plantations expanded tenfold during a 50-year period, so that by 1850, Highland Plantation included 4,350 acres, tilled by 280 slaves, a racetrack, dance hall, large sugar house, and hospital. Oh my gosh. Okay, Oakland, early 1800s. Nathaniel Evans, born in Ireland. His New Jersey born wife, Sarah Bloomfield. A handsome house. Deserted for many years, Oakland still had many of its original doors and window panes of hand-blown Waverly glass when it burned in the late 1970s. That is so sad. Oh my gosh. You know, looking at how many plantation homes were actually in Louisiana itself, and knowing that there are plantation homes in Tennessee, Virginia, all the whole South here, I can't even imagine how it's staggering. Live oak, standing at the end of winding avenue of live oaks, planted by the Barrow family. Live oak was restored in 1976 by Mr. and Mrs. Bert S. Turner. So we got some people living in that one. Ellerslie, high on a bluff in Tunica Hills. Built by slave labor under the ownership of Judge William C. Wade. Okay. Wade, who was from the Carolinas, Ellerslie, was sold in 1914 to the Percy family, who now operated as a cattle ranch. Greenwood, there's the outside of that one, and there's the inside. Over a 12,000 acre Spanish land grant purchased from Oliver Pollock. William Ruffenbarrow built Greenwood in the gently rolling lands of West Feliciana Parish. And during the Civil War, when the plantation was owned by the Reed family, federal troops burned the outbuildings but saved the house and used it as a hospital. Wow. Their first project was to straighten the great slave-made brick columns which surrounded the house on all four sides. The house itself was reconstructed entirely from photographs which came in from all over the country. So it's been reproduced based on people's information. Como, 1890, named after the lake Como in Italy. It's the only structure still occupied in what was once a bustling riverboat landing community. It's now on the other side of the Mississippi, so it's been moved. The last cabin. Years ago, when Como was a working plantation, there was an avenue of 14 slave cabins, and their backs to the Tunica Hills, their front porches overlooking a broad plain bordered by the Mississippi. Now they and the land are gone, survived by only a few acres, one solitary cabin, and the crumbling ruins of a general store. La Batute. Wow, that is like, there's some of these out in Tennessee. I've seen them where they're just old and falling apart. That was built in 1790. Oh, listen to this. Built in 1790 in Point Coupe Parish near New Roads it was built by a Spanish nobleman and overlooks the Mississippi. Considered an architectural gem, the delicately proportioned house was once framed by evidence. Okay, Don Debarra's sister married General Jean-Baptiste Labatut, an aide to Andrew Jackson in the Battle of New Orleans, and the Labatuts have owned the house ever since. It looks like it's falling down, but I guess it's still okay. Built in 1750, the Parley was one of Louisiana's oldest homes and has remained in the same family since its inception. That's beautiful. Valverde, 1818. Let's move this a little, let's get in the way. In stripping the paint down to the prime coat, the Millers found written on the wall next to the mantel in the living room an itemized list of construction expenses that totaled $37,875. Once planted in cotton and cane, Valverde's principal products today are soybean and cattle, so this is still operating. Mound House, 1840, was erected on an Indian mound in 1840 on a tract of land 3 miles south. Now the property of the Schwing Company mound has been remodeled and it is in excellent condition. That's beautiful. Live Oaks, his father having been killed in a duel with Andrew Jackson. Oh, wow. Charles H. Dickinson moved to Louisiana from Tennessee in 1825 at the urging of his father-in-law, Joseph Irwin, who deeded him property along Bayou Grosse Tete. Among the unique features of the plantation, which Dickinson called the Live Oaks Farms, is the old slave chapel located near the house. It was later used as the first schoolhouse in Rosedale and later as an Episcopal church. Live Oaks has been restored by the present owners, Mr. and Mrs. William P. Obier, who have plans to open the property to the public. Mr. Obier has family ties to the original Dickinsons who built the house. Wow. That's a staircase. Trinity, 1839, standing on an Indian mound at the end of an spacious avenue of the Live Oaks is the storied plantation. The walls are of slave-made brick, and the interior walls are 14-inch thick. The house has been well maintained and is in good condition. This is Monte Vista, 1857. Wow, these are less grand. I don't think I'm going to read them. Let's see. Not so grand. But look at these interior. Let me see what this is. The interior too. Wow, see? Wow. Okay, look at that. Nottoway, the largest plantation home in the South. Nottoway was built by John Hampden Randolph Scion of the prominent Virginia family. He named the massive home for a river and county in his native Virginia. Randolph first settled in Woodville, Mississippi, and then moved to Iberville Parish in 1841, where he built a sugar empire. To house his growing family, 3 sons and 8 daughters. Oh my gosh. Randolph engaged the New Orleans architect Henry Howard, whose design was selected over 13 others. Completed in 1859 on the eve of Civil War, Nottoway features more than 60 rooms and over 53,000 square feet under the original slate roof. Nottoway, restored by Arlen Deese, still stands solid and stately. It was opened in 1981 to the public for the first time in its more than 122 years of history. It's just, I mean, that's just, okay, I'm overwhelmed. And these are, you know, what the rooms look like inside. I just, you know, the way we live as Americans today in such simplicity makes this opulence look so fairy tale and out of place. Indian Camp, 1850. Mulberry Grove. Belle Helene. I don't think I see much more that I would be. This is a very long video, so I'm not going to get to the Tennessean in this one. Thank you for joining me, you guys. Appreciate it very much. I'll see you in the next video.